This is my games art environment assignment. In this presentation, I'll be showing my detailed works through weeks 1 to 6 and then my unique assets. So to start with, we had to make a Doric column. This included gathering references, making a BSP in Unreal 5, creating the asset in Maya, and then UV unwrapping the asset. To start with, I've gone into PureRef to create some reference imagery of my Doric column. If we look on the right here, I started with the dimensions. I wanted to make sure that I had the dimensions correct to a character scale. So I've got a picture of a person outline next to a Doric column. I then had all the dimensions, including the height, the width, the depth. It also had the capital dimensions as well, which is the top section. And then I also had some of the features, including how many flutes are in the side of it. And then I gathered some picture referencing, some quite newish looking ones, as well as some quite old looking Doric columns. As we can see, this one is completely scuffed and worn. This will be off one of the old either Colosseums in Rome or one of the Greek temples. Um, I then had some different examples of columns of that period. So our Doric column is this one on the left. And as we can see here, I've got some 3D models of some columns as well. Also showing more base plates, so how the columns would stand. I wasn't at this point. I wasn't sure if I was going to have my columns stood on a base plate. I've also got some wireframes from Sketchfab, just to have a look to see what other people were doing, how they were doing the fluting. It looks like from here they were just using bevels and then sectioning the bottom bit. So I think that's one, two, three, that's four sections. I then went into the game engine and made a BSP for the column. If I go play from here, we can see that it's got all the right dimensions from my screenshots and my reference imagery. I think that's come out quite nicely for the reference. That looks big enough to me. It doesn't look too big, and it's wide enough as well. I've then used that Unreal FBX BSP to scale my column in Maya. So I started with the midsection. I wanted to make sure that I had all the fluting correct, so I've used bevels on the edges and then done some segments in here to create that. I've then duplicated special all the way around and then combined them all together. I've then made a little section on the top here and it carries on all the way through. So this is my first middle piece, that's one piece. And then the top section, I've just used extrude on edges in the side view like so, making sure that I had the scale all correct and everything. So yeah, that's the top section. I've then done a hard and soften edge on this so that it didn't look so smudged and weird shadowy. And the same on the bottom section. These aren't the same, these sections. This one is different and modular to the top one. So if I put them side by side, in the side by side view we can see that they're different here. So what I like about this model as well, I think I've got the fluting pretty perfect, to be fair. I think I've got just the right amount of segments to make it quite low poly still, but also give it a really nice light bounce in the sections here. And it's perfectly even on all the sides because I did duplicate special on this flat plane, so everything top to bottom is exactly the same. The amount of flutings is good, and yeah, the sections is good, I think. And this is the side view wireframe of my column. So the top there, coming through down to the mid, we can see all the fluting and everything, all the way down and down to the bottom. If I were to change and improve this model, I think I would do it a little higher poly next time, because we get some quite sharp hard edges on the top section and through the mid section here. We've done this in a low poly version because it needs to go in game, so it kind of needs to be well optimized and not super high poly, so it doesn't make the game engine run really harshly. So yeah, for next time I'll probably make this a little higher poly to get rid of some of the hard edges. And here is my column in Unreal 5. It's untextured at the moment, but we can see it's scaled correctly to the BSP. They're the same shape and size. I'll do a quick run around, but yeah, like I say, untextured at the moment, but it's got collision and everything. These are my UVs for the column. I've used techniques such as cylindrical based unwrapping and camera based unwrapping. The theory behind this was that I wanted to get the seam placements perfect, so along all of the hard edges, so I wouldn't have like weird random floating seams all over the model. So as well as camera based and cylindrical unwrapping, I was then doing unfold and optimize, and I was doing straighten. The straighten was giving me weird edges, like it was creasing all over themselves. So I ended up not using straighten for some sections, but then I did use straighten for other sections. That's why some of these checkers aren't uniform and straight all the way through, like the checkers here. So I did manage to get the straighten to work on these fluting sections along here. So if we follow the UVs down, we can see that these mid sections are all nice and straight and uniform. Nice big checkers on there as well. So for the bottom section, this was the same as the top section, camera based and cylindrical, unwrapping with unfold, optimize, and straighten if possible. Um, the straighten's also not really worked properly on the bottom section. That's why these checkers were a little bit out of sync. But yeah, I've got that line cut through the side section as well, to try and keep them in two parts. And this is my UV map for the three sections. As we can see, I've got all the fluting sections and all the sections cut into essentially two parts. Um, the curving on the straight bits, that's where the straighten didn't really work. So I've just gone and straightened everything so I can show that what was happening when I was doing straighten. I was getting like creasing, unfolding on top of each other, and that is not going to be good for texturing. So that's the reason I didn't do a straighten. I've done straighten where I can. Down the midsection, everything was nice and straight, but on the top and bottom sections, it wasn't really working. So to fix that for next time, I would probably cut them into three sections. That would mean that I can do straighten and then I can stack them all on top of each other, so I get more checkerboard used. So now that my UVs are done, I can now go into Substance Painter and put a texture on it. I went back to my reference material and I wanted to do like a white marble for my texture, kind of like this reference image here. I know this one's stone, but I kind of wanted to use the colours and some of the dirt that's going to be from the outside on it. This is also a good reference that I used, another kind of white marble. I wanted to have some dirt around the lips and inside the fluting as well. As the model was going to be modular in Unreal, I needed to do each individual piece individually. So I've gone through and done a white marble texture on the bottom bit to start with. As we can see, there's some dirt around the edges as well. Kind of breaks up the whiteness, and it's kind of shiny as well. The roughness is fairly high to show that it's quite a shiny marble. So these are the same texture layers, but on the midsection now. The fluting has come out quite nicely. The dirt kind of packs into the fluting well, and on the edge section here, you can see that it's a bit of muck in the middle there. I did put subdividing edges along the sections here, so we can see there's like a clear seam running across the middle of the model. I've got a couple of those. There's another one down the bottom here. My understanding was that they basically make the columns in sections and then put them together. So that texture enables me to have it so that it's been like sectioned into three sections. And then finally, this is the textured top capital of the model. The seam placement has come out really nicely. If I hadn't have done camera based and cylindrical things, I would have had seams kind of running all over this. But the fact that I put all the seams on the hard edges has made it come out really nicely. So now that I've finished with Substance Painter, I've now put the texture on my column in the engine. So these are my two columns with the textures on them. If I just quickly jump in and we'll run around them. Look quite good. I was a little worried about the whiteness being a bit too white, but I think the dirt kind of breaks them up fairly well. This is like one solid piece, and this is the modular version. This is just to illustrate that all these pieces are individual and modular, so they all kind of move independently. I can use them and wherever I want, so I can change the top or the bottom wherever needed. So now I've got my untextured and textured columns and engine. I've gone and done the ray tracing. I put a couple of point lights on just so we can get the light bounce going nicely. These are my project settings for the ray tracing. During the ray tracing process, I placed a few point lights around the scene. I wanted to have like an orange, deserty, warm light feel. So in order to set the scene better, I took out the volumetric cloud. That was to make the scene look a bit more like clear skied and warm. I also changed the lux intensity on the directional lights, and also on some of the point lights. I made those orange, so that we get like a bit of orange shine off of the pillars. I kind of wanted that to be like a sunset, as well as it being a warm desert environment. This is my quad draw for retop on the Stanford Bunny. It's gone quite well. The head, I've basically just drawn quads along the forehead and around the eyes, and then tried to keep like a line going through the spine and down to the tail. I've tried to keep the quads nice and broad and then add subdivision later. Um, it's been a little tricky. I've tried to, like I said, I've tried to keep everything nice and big. But the problem is, like as I get to some of the edges and some of the corners here, things have just been kind of getting smaller and smaller. I was planning to just add the subdivision in later and then kind of relax it all out to get the shape. Yeah, I mean it's gone okay. The ears were quite good. I've managed to keep the shape of those pretty well. The eyes aren't bad either. But yeah, if I was going to do this again, I'd like to keep everything nice and big and add those subdivisions in later. There's one or two little pockets of weirdness in here. So down in this side, for example, I think the problem is here I might have just had a little too many subdivisions, and I've just got too small with the squares. So yeah, that has kind of caused a bit of a problem. Those little squares. And this is the mesh pre-smooth without the quad draw on it. So once the rabbit's been smoothed, it looks quite good. It's kind of kept the shape of the fur quite well. So you can kind of see there's like little shimmers down here on the fur, and on the back as well. They're in the Stanford Rabbit picture as well. So it kind of keeps that shape quite well. The ears aren't bad. As I say, the ears came out pretty well. You can kind of see the eye deformation as well. Um, those little pockets of weirdness, it's created like a little ridge just here. So I'd have to go back and fix that if I was going to do this later. But yeah, the smooth is quite good, I think. And here are my bunnies in engine. This is the low poly pre-smooth version, and then this is the smoothed version. Um, the scaling was a little spotty on them, so I scaled them up a little in Maya and then re-exported them, so they're a little bit bigger. They're kind of like regular bunny shape now. For my unique asset, I originally was going to do a jukebox, but midway through some of the modelling on that, I decided to go against that and do a Schofield revolver. I chose this asset because it was something that I've wanted to do for a while, and I have attempted to do this previously in my foundation year, but I figured now that I've got some new skills and I kind of know a bit more about what I'm doing now, I'd have a better go at it. So I gathered some reference materials for Schofield revolvers. I wanted to do like an engraved one, as well as one that had like a it open so that the bullets would show. So looking at these models in Maya, this is what I've managed to model. I've got the one that's open and then one that's closed that's one asset. So if I grab one bit here, the cylinder for example, so basically what I did for this is that I got cylinders, made sure they were equal on all sides, so made sure like these were six and then this middle section had six edges. I then extended them, duplicated special all around so I know they're totally even, and then bridged around this cylinder. So that gave me all these faces in here. It was a little bit messy in here. There was quite a lot of tries and stuff. So I basically deleted a bunch of those and tried to make it quad-based topology, and obviously cleared all the angons and everything. For the main body of the gun, essentially what I did was I had a flat image plane like this, and I then used the side view to mask out the shape of the gun. So I did that for the grip, the handles, the trigger, and everything. Basically traced on the geometry to that. And I was trying something new with chamfering the edges as well, because this is only a portfolio piece. I wanted to make sure that it was quite high poly and nice and smooth. So I was basically getting the correct shape and then chamfering all the edges and then smoothing, and that gave quite a high poly detailed version of what I needed. This barrel section was actually the trickiest part of the model. Essentially what I had to do, I had to combine some basic geometry, and then smooth it afterwards. So I started with a cylinder for the barrel, and then I got a cube and extended it and traced out over the picture again, um, like so. And I then basically had to kind of target weld them together, and then do all the chamfer edges and smooth again. Um, this bit was pretty tricky down here. This curve, essentially what I had to do was cut some lines in with the multi-cut tool, and then extrude them out, and then do the soft select to pull them out so that they're all pulled out evenly. And I finished the model with all the relatively simple bits, so like the trigger and the trigger guard were quite easy. They were just tracing over the shape again, chamfering the edges and smoothing. And then we've got the same for the rivets and everything. They're just kind of bog standard rivets. They are smoothed as well because, like I say, this is only going on the portfolio site, so I wanted to make everything as detailed and high poly as I could without it destroying things. Same with the hammer and the sight and everything. They're all quite easy to do. They're just kind of basic shapes that were smoothed. This bit was a little tricky. This like bullet feeder. So this is like the when you open the gun, this pushes upwards and pushes the bullets out. That was a little tricky to make. I think what I did was I think I created a where is it? I think I used a gear and then did some like fiddled with the settings of the gear so it only had a certain amount of sides and then changed the thickness and everything like that, and I got quite a good shape from that. But generally, overall, I am pretty happy with this model. I think it looks really good. There's some issues here and there, like there's some weird star pointed geometry here, and then on the other side as well. I think these light chamfer lines were a little too thick. I've ended up with quite a lot of geometry in there that's probably not needed. But I think generally it's really good. I've got the pivot point on here as well, so it kind of opens and closes. I haven't animated this or anything. I was just going to take still shots of it opening and closing. So these are my UVs for the gun. This section here is the barrel section. So it's got all the back plates and everything, and the cylinder for the long barrel. Quite good. I've used cylindrical and camera based again, the same as the Technics as the columns. This is just so I can control the seam placements. I've done the same thing for the grip section. This is another material, so I don't overlap all the UVs. Yeah, so this is the grip section. So it's got the handles, the actual wood parts of the grips, the triggers, and all of the rivets and things. And then this is the inner cylindrical section. Um, I've unstacked all these shells because I can then do like custom engravings on each one without them all painting over each other. But yeah, the same techniques that I've used for the columns. So for my texturing, I've tried quite a few new things. As we can see, I've got some pretty decent engravings on the gun. Um, I started with a snake, and this is just a font down here. Essentially, what I've done for these engravings is I've gone into Photoshop. I've not really used Photoshop before, so I've had to kind of learn some new techniques there. Um, so I've got some free use pictures of snakes and just kind of general engravings, and then taken them to Photoshop, blacked out the background behind them, and then imported them to Substances as a custom alpha. So I did that with the snake, and I did that with these like flowery patterns on the cylinder. I also had to flip the snake in Photoshop as well, because obviously this is going to be different to the other side. I can't just use the same one. For the general materials on the gun, I've used a walnut wood on the grips. I've used like a painted metal on the main body of the gun. I've then done some edge wear generators to try and give it some wear and everything, and a bit of like variation in the texture there. The cylinder is brass. It does look quite gold, but that's actually a brass. I used like color codes and everything to find out what the exact color code for brass was. That's also got a metal edge wear on the cylinder. And this is a nickel actually. I used the color code for nickel as well because I figured the trigger might be nickel. Um, I've then painted on some like height indents in the sight, because my reference imagery had the same sort of thing up the top here. So this was the reference image I used for up here on the top. You can actually see like ridges within the sight. So obviously as well, I've baked this. I've actually baked in 4K. I've not baked in 4K before, so I'm hoping it's going to give me quite a high quality item here. I've used the low poly mesh as high poly. I've done the super sampling as 64, and I've obviously taken off ID map. I don't really think this makes much of a difference, but I've been told it helps performance slightly. These are all the alphas I made in Photoshop. I had to cut out the background and make it black, otherwise they wouldn't show up in Substance Painter as alphas. And that's the one that I've used that I had to flip for my grips. So here are my guns in engine. This desk isn't actually mine. I didn't make this. This is a free use desk that I've taken from Sketchfab. I downloaded and put it in Unreal just so I could get a nice picture for the render. But I've arranged the guns, one open and one closed. They're sat on the desk. The materials look quite nice in the engine. I need to adjust this lighting a little bit. I think it's a little light still. So in conclusion for this whole project, there's some parts that I've really enjoyed and that I think I've been quite good at. The modelling, for instance, I think I'm quite good at modelling. I really enjoy that aspect of the whole process, as well as the texturing. Um, That being said, I think I did have some problems with the model. There was a few bits that really took me some time to kind of get right. That barrel, for instance, trying to link those two separate pieces together, and then making it look good was pretty tricky. So as I mentioned before, I kind of struggled with the retop as well of the rabbit. As we can see from these pictures here, I've ended up with really small quads, kind of on the feet and in some of the ear sections. Although the ear sections did turn out quite well, I didn't really want really tiny quads all the way through. I tried to keep them quite broad and then add the divisions in later. So this is something that I'm going to need practice on, and I'm quite glad we're starting a character modelling assessment soon. I imagine we'll be doing a lot more quad drawing within that. Another section I think I've done quite well is texturing. I do enjoy arranging the layers and doing kind of edge wears and things and trying new techniques within the texturing, such as the engravings. I've not done engravings before. I've not really used Photoshop before, so going through and creating 10 personal custom alphas from Photoshop was quite pleasing. Um, Also the fonts, I've not really kind of explored fonts before either. So typing in the like the brand of the gun as well was quite interesting for me. I enjoyed that, and that's about all I have for this one. So thank you for watching. Sorry it was so long.